This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. It's episode 485 of the Craft Beer Brewing Podcast. I'm Jamie Bogner, and joining me today for this last of our Chicago episodes is Mike Schallau from Is Was. Welcome to the podcast, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
You've got such a wonderful voice for podcasting. You're like, you should definitely host a podcast yourself.
I've been thinking about it. I've been talking with my friend Chris about maybe doing that.
Yeah. You might want to call it Beer Temple Podcast.
No, yeah, maybe we will.
No, all kidding aside, Mike co-hosts the Beer Temple Podcast. It's one of those beer podcasts that I listen to, and sometimes it's entertaining. Sometimes, it goes off in a whole nother direction.
Well,
but
well, as I described it to you via email, it's like the Three Stooges knew what Citra was. So.
You don't give yourself enough credit for that, but
sure.
I enjoy listening to y'all. And we don't normally have podcast hosts here as guests on the podcast, but you're also a brewer. And in addition to that, you brew Saison, and you brew Saison here in Chicago in a very focused way. You brew such good Saison that our readers in last year's reader survey put you on the top 20 Saison brewers in the world in that reader survey. And it's like, I'm coming back. And I was looking back, the first time I contacted you was like 2003. It has now taken 3 years, 2023.
2023. Okay.
23. It's taken 3 years to actually make this happen. But things eventually come to fruition.
Things work out.
And here we are. So over the course of this episode, we're going to talk about Saison brewing. We're going to talk about single culture Saison. We'll talk about mixed culture Saison. We'll talk about using ingredients with Saison. We'll talk about fruit. We'll talk about spicing. We're just going to talk about Saison because you know what? Hey, we're here. You've got an entire board, like a dozen plus Saisons on your taproom board here. And I love it because as soon as someone says, hey, you can't make Saison anymore, you're like, fuck that. I'm going to make some Saison.
That's right.
And I love that spirit because I love Saison beer. And so anyway, we're going to pick your brain about that. Before we do.
Hey there, Justin from G&D Chillers. Sustainability isn't just a buzzword. It's a necessity for breweries today. That's why we've engineered solutions like the Elite 290 Micro Series, running on natural refrigerants with near zero GWP.
That's right. G&D's new Elite 290 Micro Series is built for brewers who care about sustainability and performance. It runs on a natural refrigerant with near zero global warming potential, has a compact footprint, and features variable speed fans for efficiency. They've chilled beer for over 3,000 breweries across North America, and with 24/7 support and remote monitoring, your cold side stays dialed in day or night. Get the details on natural refrigerant technology at gdchillers.com/podcast. And Berkeley Yeast just launched Dry Tropics London, their best-selling liquid yeast strain. Now with all the ease of use benefits of dry yeast, Dry Tropics London delivers the soft, pillowy mouthfeel and juicy character you'd expect from a top-tier London Ale strain, but with a serious upgrade, a burst of thiols that unleash vibrant, layered notes of grapefruit and passion fruit. A lot of brewers love the clean passion fruit you get from Tropics, but they don't want every IPA to be a tropical fruit bomb. At the dry yeast price point, you can pitch and ditch without breaking the bank, or you can co-pitch with your house strain to adjust the intensity of the notes. And with nationwide free shipping, there's never been a better time to try Dry Tropics. Order now at berkeleyyeast.com and experience the ease and impact of Dry Tropics London yeast. Also, this episode is sponsored by PackTech, delivering craft beer multi-packing you can trust. PackTech's handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable, helping breweries close the loop and advance the circular economy. With a minimalist design, durable functionality you can rely on, and custom color matching, PackTech helps brands stand out while staying sustainable. Trusted by craft brewers nationwide, they offer a smarter, sustainable way to carry your beer. To learn more, visit packtech-opi.com. That's packtech-opi.com. I hope that was suitably deep and booming for you, Mike. When I walked up to the tap room, walked up to the bar, and there the bartender was like, Oh yeah, Mike told me some guy with a deep booming voice was going to stop by.
Well, as I was saying, it's so funny you started in print media because you have such a great voice for the radio. Face for TV, but voice for the radio.
That is too kind. I would, if you read the reviews on Apple Podcasts, there is an actual review on there that says that I have a voice for silent movies.
Wow.
I know,
incredible.
Right? Yeah. There people out there are cruel, but you're a brewer. You read Untapped reviews. You understand that.
I usually just get people when they meet me in person that listen to the podcast thinking that I'm much shorter than they thought I would be, and I have more hair than they thought I would have.
Interesting.
Those are the two comments I get most often.
But you do have the beard that everybody expects.
I do. Yeah. Gotta have the beard.
And you have quite a voice yourself.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So tell me a story. Tell me about your arc through beer.
I got into beer when I was in college, as many people do. When I went to DePaul here in Chicago, and my senior year, they, for some reason, went to a 4-day-a-week schedule. So everyone had Fridays off, and Half Acre had just kind of opened up their bottle shop. And I lived in Lincoln Park, and a bus would take me door to door from my apartment to Half Acre. So I would ride the bus every Friday, get a growler, come back and drink it, and started homebrewing, being inspired by those beers. I got a very stupid degree in college, one that does not set you up to get a job.
What would that be?
I got a degree, bachelor's of music and performing arts management with a minor in business administration.
Oh, well, see, at least you have a minor in business administration.
I use it much more than I'd like to.
I have a degree in religious studies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You should meet Marty. Marty's a regular here who wrote a book about Trappist monks.
Well, my career as a Protestant minister did not pan out.
No.
And so I am evangelizing instead here in the beer world.
Well, we were all grateful for that.
Appreciate that.
But I started homebrewing out of my apartment. I was a very bad homebrewer though. I was, not patient, but immediately started brewing all grain. We did one batch from the Cooper's kit and then immediately went to all grain because I was like, I got to control all these variables that I can all mess up equally.
Sure.
Then after college, I couldn't get that job. So I was working at a liquor store in town called West Lakeview Liquors. That was kind of one of the first real craft beer hubs in Chicago. This was a little bit before everything took off. So the beers that we were really revering and drinking and loving at that time were like Blaugie and Fantôme and Cantillon and Jolly Pumpkin and these things that a lot of stuff in the Shelton Brothers book that we revered as the most creative peak of making interesting liquids. So that's how I entered drinking craft beer after Half Acre. I met the guys who started Pipeworks. They had worked at that same store just before I did. And I worked the day shift and received all the orders and just met them and started volunteering there. And I worked there for about 7 years, going from unpaid intern to eventually running all daily operations and the barrel program and recipe development, and just kind of wearing a bunch of hats because it was a real pirate ship at the beginning. And, you could fill up a lot of space if you just said, I can do that, or I want to do that.
Sure. Whoever raises their hand gets some new responsibilities.
Whoever just started doing it, I guess you're the guy now. But it was a lot of autodidactic learning there too, of on the job, but also reading and the internet was in kind of a nascent period for good information about brewing, but spent a lot of time finding the information that I was looking for and wanting to get better. And I worked there for
lots of ninjas, lots of unicorns.
So many ninjas, so many unicorns. Somewhat fun, oddly for what I do now, making very dry, low ABV beers. But the first beer they let me write the recipe for was a 10.5% white stout with cacao, vanilla, and lactose that was meant to drink like a stout. That was a Big Lebowski themed beer, which is, when you're 24, you make a lot of different decisions than when you're 37.
It all feeds into the fabric of your life. You didn't make bad decisions and you wouldn't be making even worse decisions now.
That's right. I haven't had that beer in a very long time. They still make it and I don't know if I could drink it now, but you change, But I worked there for about 7 years and did all the crazy things that we were doing there. And at a certain point, it was just, I kind of had fallen out of love with beer and was just doing it because it was what I did. And I was at the beer temple and I had a La Vermantois. And I was like, oh, this is why I started really getting into this in the first place. And there aren't a lot of people making this type of beer anywhere. And there's not a lot of people making it here. So I wanted to see if I could figure out how to make it here and then get people to care about it.
Yeah. Build an actual business where people will come pay you
right.
to drink this thing too.
Right.
Sure.
And like I was at a point at Pipeworks where...
And La Vermantoise, for those that are not as familiar, is a collaboration beer between Hill Farmstead and Blogy.
Yes. And Pipeworks at a point where there are a lot of like talented people there already. So I was kind of not in love with it anymore. And there were people who could take over the things that I was doing and really probably do a better job than I was doing. So in my head, it worked for everyone. So left Pipeworks in 2019 and finished in May, brewed our first batch of beer on June 1st and then released it on August 19th. And at that point we were renting, or August 16th, we were renting space from other breweries. So we rented space from Mars for a long time and then Beguile, which is just down the street from us here. And we would brew on weekends. We'd have our own tanks and at Mars, we'd have to push their old Psycho brew into the brew house, connect it to the gas, make sure the gas wasn't leaking, brew our 5 barrels of beer, clean everything, and push the brew house back into the storage area.
The old Psycho brew house.
Yeah, well, that was what
big open pots. Yeah,
that was what Pipeworks started brewing on, and so I was like, I know how to drive that thing, so I can figure out how to figure out if any of these beers anyone cares about any of these.
I mean,
beers.
Talk about an authentic way to make saison, and a brew house completely not built for it. But
brew house not built for really anything.
Yeah, well, which also describes a fair number of saison brew houses in Belgium.
Yeah, I remember at that time watching a video with the Blaugy Pierre Alex talking about their process and just like mashing in, running it off, cleaning the mash tun out, putting it back in the mash. And I was like, well, I should at least work that hard. But yeah, at Mars, we had to bring the brew house out, put the brew house away pretty much every time we brewed. And then we moved to Beguile where we were in a space that was about 600 square feet, but we used their brew house. But we had to move all the tanks in and then move them back out to make sure that there was no cross-contamination of the yeast or anything.
Yeah, I can't have all that weird culture that you have in there.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, we do clean beers here, and we probably have a much more, at least as rigorous a cleaning procedure as most other breweries because of our fear of infecting those, or other people rent space from us and we don't want them to be like, hey, we're like, hey, it tastes pretty good. And they're like, well, it's got a lot of diastatic yeast in it. We're like, is that a problem? For them, yes. But yeah, so we were there, did that for about 5 years until we found this space we're in now. That has been a brewery since 2007 or 8 when Metropolitan was there. The space we're in right now is actually Koval's Distillery for a long time, which is like the first distillery in Chicago since Prohibition. They both have moved or closed, and we took over.
It's a tough time for distilleries these days.
They're down the street. They're bigger than ever.
Well, that's
so
good.
They're
that's
doing
good.
great.
I know few. They closed few down here in Chicago.
Yeah, Evanston.
Oh,
Sorry.
Well. Greater metro. Okay.
I went to a festival in China one time, and someone came up to me and was like, I'm from Chicago. And we're like, where in Chicago? And they said, well, Evanston. We're like, you're not from Chicago. Even in China, we have to be like, no, none of your suburban. I'm not from here either. But so I shouldn't be that stringent about that. But yeah, so now we're in this space. We have a tap room that you can actually come to. We opened the tap room on the 5-year anniversary to the day we sold our first beer. So kind of a cool, and in there was the pandemic, but no one wants to hear about the pandemic. But
yeah, we all remember it or have forgotten it,
right.
Depending on our approach. Well, I want to talk about how you set about making saison. Then obviously, the beautiful thing about saison is that it's not like there's a whole series of stringent rules about how you make it. There are certainly some lanes to operate in. There are single culture, there is mixed culture, there are varying degrees of historicity to that. There are, challenges if you talk to, someone like Yvonne de Betz about the impact of brewing these Belgian beers with tank geometry and how that impacts fermentation. There are varying degrees and approaches to acidity and, of course, very highly citric and acidic approaches to mixed fermentation. From what I've tasted of yours, you tend towards a lot of subtle expression, and your approach to mixed culture is awfully refined and minimalist relative to a lot in the general space, which also seems to kind of echo where we are in beer today, where at one point, if you made mixed culture or sour beer, like it had to just be weirdly excessively acidic
Sure.
in order to melt the teeth enamel off of of folks that were drinking it. And
Sure.
and I would say that your approach, even with mixed culture, is a much gentler hand on that. So I want to talk about how you've developed and then also control that culture to what you are looking for, how you pull that out, and how you build these kind of refined expressions of this. Before we do, Oregon hop country is heaven to world-class lager varieties, and Indie Hops is proud to have introduced Oregon's newest lager hop, Lorien, in 2022. Lorien is in a growing list of beers that have found their way to the podium and, more importantly, into the hearts of lager lovers across the country. Discover Indie Hops Lorien. Side effects may include rampant festivity, sales bumps, and exceeded expectations. Indie Hops, life is short. Let's make it flavorful. And if you're like many podcast listeners, you've got a lot of beers at home and your regular fridge is at capacity. Enter the Midea 50/50 Flex, the industry's first dual compartment, 3-way convertible freezer. Here's what all that means for you options. The 50/50 has the power to be all freezer, all fridge, or a little bit of both, but you'll probably want to use those 20 cubic feet as a massive garage-ready beer fridge. You can also change which side the door is on or how you want shelves to be arranged. The 50/50 totally flexes to fit your life. Plus, it's designed to maintain a stable temperature even in non-climate controlled conditions, so you can crack a cold one even on the warmest days in the man cave. Take your garage to the next level. Check out midea.com/US to get more info about this game changer today. Also, the Beyond Beer space is booming, and Old Orchard is here for it, supplying breweries with fruit ingredients for all of your beverage needs. Low, no alcohol, hard lemonade, seltzer, cider, and more. Old Orchard has supplied hundreds of industrial customers across 49 states, including nationally and internationally loved brands, so you'll be in good company. More information and free samples are waiting at oldorchard.com/brewer. That's oldorchard.com/brewer. So you start making your first Saison in 2019, and now 7 years later, here we are. I could try to track back all of that, but for you, let's just start with a broader sense of it. What, in your estimation, is Saison, and how do you define it?
The only thing we use a specific yeast, but the yeast doesn't necessarily define what a Saison is. You can make something that is identifiable as a Saison with any yeast, as Yvonne has told all of us, and we must agree.
And we must agree.
Right. There is an element of like rusticity or rusticness to it that for me mostly comes from grist bill choice and then fermentation choices. And then there's some level of expressive yeast character. And for our beers, there should be a very distinct dryness. Other than that, like we can play around anywhere in that area. What we have built, like
rusticity, that sounds like a subject that Kate Bernat wrote about for us a few years ago.
Yeah, exactly. I read the article. We build everything in this brewery around getting the best expression of yeast from a specific strain of yeast that starts as 042 Belgian Saison 2 from Omega. And that is like the first batch of what was beer I ever brewed. I brewed in a garage with my friend Noah, who now has a brewery called Fulcra. And a lot of the things we did in that like 15-gallon batch are what we still do. So that yeast, a good amount of spelt, and we basically brewed Wilby there. A good amount of spelt.
Wilby is your flagship
beer. Yeah. Good amount of spelt, or some other grain that is not barley. That one also has triticale in it, which was more of like a metaphorical choice about the blending of old world things and new world things, because that's a completely man-made grain hybrid. And then
philosophical grain choices. I love it.
Most of the choices ultimately boil down to some philosophical belief we have. There's a very defined mission everyone gets a copy of here that is three parts and too long to describe here, and probably not technically a mission statement, but it makes making choices easier when you have all the choices you can make.
When you have a dogma to ascribe to.
Yeah, I mean, the dogma develops over time when you figure out things that work. So we chose that. Yeah.
So this is a living religion, and not not one that is just etched in stone.
No. Things are very much alive and changing and evolving.
I'm going to bring it back to religion now. Now that we've
we've opened the tomb of
exactly
your past. But the biggest thing we do is try to figure out how to get the best, and for us that means the right ester character specifically out of that yeast. And so choices we make are what we feed it, how we present that food to it, and then how we carry that through the entire fermentation process. So by the food, we find I don't love...
And I'm fascinated when you say it starts as this yeast.
Right.
Because...
Yeah.
Now there's a developmental process that goes on where even what ends up being, fermenting here, it only starts in this place.
It starts with that yeast. And the reason I say it starts with that yeast is because we do open top fermentation for all the saisons, and then we top crop them. So over the first 3 generations specifically, that yeast changes a ton. And we've had to start back, if mostly because of scheduling problems. We only have, we only have so much space or so many tanks, and then like the yeast is only so viable to a certain point, and it's better to get a new pitch, or sometimes we co-pitch a new pitch with the yeast we're using currently at like generation 28 or whatever it's on, when we're probably shouldn't be using it anymore. But that's why it changed.
Why not? Generation 28. I mean, there's farmhouses in Belgium that have,
Well, everything here is organoleptic. We use a lot of tools to get numbers, but all the choices are made because of how the beer tastes and how it's behaving. So when we need to get new yeast or add more yeast to that, it is based on the ester production, how we're perceiving it, and then fermentation times too. Like if things are really lagging or slowing down, we do counts and stuff like that, which are correlated, but not always directly with how it's actually behaving.
You're rustic and you'll allow it a fair amount of room, but at the same time, it is still a brewery, and you still do need it to actually ferment and not just, put wort in there that's going to sit there forever.
Yeah, the SBA knows where my house is. So we have to have something that is relatively consistent. And that's actually part of the fun of doing this, is not just being able to make every choice, right? You need to have choices that are somewhat limited by the fact that this is a commercial enterprise. You try to make the right ones, but there are pressures on it that if I was a home brewer, who knows if these beers would taste exactly the same. But I love how they're tasting now. But to get that yeast character, we tend to not feed it wheat very much. That tends to make more phenolics. I don't know if there's like scientific evidence behind that, but more spelt, more oats, some rye. And then
wheat creates more phenolics, huh?
It seems to be the case for what we see from the yeast, or a more pronounced phenolic expression, which I would imagine is more phenolics, but I got a music degree. So, so we use a lot of spelt because it gives you a similar body and nuttiness that we really enjoy. And because, my favorite beers when we were thinking about what this brew should be were the spelt saisons from Blagy. So 042 Belgian Saison yeast number 2 is probably their yeast. They won't tell you exactly what it is, but we knock it in at between 80 and 86 degrees, Fahrenheit, depending on what we're trying to do with it and what the beer is and what time of the year it is.
Let's talk. We're talking about grain. Let's track through that before we start really getting into fermentation. Mm-hmm. And so you build this with some base of barley and potentially spelt, oats, and other grains in order to build this. And the ultimate goal of Saison is a very dry beer.
Yeah.
Is there something to your mash process on this that you use in order to promote that kind of fermentability, or is that simply driven by fermentation?
This
is the step mash question.
Yeah, but, we don't step mash. Okay. It's a single infusion mash, but it's a 148, 149.
Yeah.
What we and we kind of do the opposite of a step mash, where we try to keep the sparge temperature lower too. The idea being, if you keep it in that conversion range for the entire time, you're going to get very simple sugars. I don't know if it's real, but I think I heard it on this podcast from someone actually. So we started doing that, and it worked really well. We also, as like an ethos for the business, try to use grain as locally as possible. We're in the Midwest, and there are a lot of great grain suppliers. We use Sugar Creek malt for basically everything, either Saison or non-Saison. And then other than that,
man, everybody here loves Sugar Creek.
And
not just here, in lots of places through the Midwest.
I mean, the stuff's great. And if it wasn't great, we probably wouldn't use it. And it would be tough because, you want your ethos to be what you believe. And then sometimes you're like, well, I also believe that I want this thing to taste the best it can possibly taste. We started off using Environment, and then we switched because we used it one time and we're like, this is so much more interesting and characterful and delicious. And maybe that's freshness. Maybe it's what Caleb is actually doing. Maybe it's just that it tastes of this place more than anything else. And obviously we're in Ravenswood. We're not in a pastoral area where we're getting terroir from, the surround. We don't do much spontaneous fermentation either, but there is cities smell and taste different. Areas smell and taste different if you're just like breathing the air and paying attention to it. And we try to make beers that smell and taste of Chicago. And part of that is like getting our produce or getting our like raw ingredients from as close as possible for grain specifically. There aren't a lot of hops that are as low alpha as we would like them to be grown, not in Michigan hardly at all anymore, or in the US generally. But grain, we very specifically try to choose local things. We're trying to make things that taste like this place.
So then, how do you describe that kind of grain flavor as it then goes through this fermentation process? Because you talk about having a great flavor, but what is that great flavor relative to, say, a continental, Pilsner malt in the same context?
Sure.
Like in a sense, we're saying, and we're not talking about like humongous swings. We're talking about fine points, obviously here.
Yeah. I mean, when you're chewing it, every bag of grain we open and we mill, we most eat a little bit of just to taste it and have fun. But there's this like very bright, almost melon-like character specifically to the spelt. The barley also has like a fruity notes to it that like I never really experienced with like larger batches of things. Like we use Brees a lot, which is great malt at Pipeworks, but it's just different than what we're doing with Sugar Creek. And there's like top notes. There's brighter, fresher character to these malts. That is, by the time we were getting Environment floor malted barley, it tasted great of barley, but that was just like kind of it.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that. And if that's the character you're going for.
Certainly. If you're looking for a minimalist lager, like that's probably exactly what you want there.
Right. I don't think me saying that is going to hurt their business at all.
They'll be okay.
Yeah.
They'll be okay.
Great malt, but there's just something unique to it. And I think there's freshness to it too, where there's a very small producer and sometimes he runs out of stuff. And then I'm like, I need more of that. And then I'll text him like, we got a lot of spelt that tasted like strawberries. And I was like, what's up with this? Like, what is this, a different varietal spelt? Whatever this is, you need to keep getting this. And he's like, I don't know, just fresh. And I'm like, well, it's always pretty fresh. Like, what's up with this one? He's like, it's just good. I'm like, all right, great. And every one since then has had a little strawberry, a little cantaloupe to the actual spelt itself, which I think comes through in the beers. But who knows?
And for you, you are not just thinking about how that conveys, coming, like it's not a linear, it's here in the malt and so it's going to end up in the beer.
Right.
Well, you're also thinking about how you set up this beer so that the fermentation and this yeast, which is pretty flavor active, how it can work on some of those, you can call them precursors then at that point, because that yeast is going to take and work on those, and some will carry through and some will get transformed into other things. How, in this sense, how does your fermentation then work with some of these malt flavors to ultimately reflect in a finished beer?
I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if there's like thiol pathways turned on in this strain
Oh
of yeast,
man,
no
you said
one's
the
really.
T word.
Sorry, do I have to drink now? I mean, it's doing. I don't know. I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
Sure.
I think the flavor is carrying through there. I don't know if there's like anything happening metabolism wise with the yeast because of other than the fact that I think there's a little bit less phenolics happening if we don't use as much wheat. But I'm not sure what the flavor of those things is doing in the fermentation process.
No worries. And so, at the same time, you are single infusion mashing, but using things like oats to also build a bigger body, also knowing that Saison yeast is usually pretty good about eating a lot of that, through that process. And so in terms of grist percentages, how much is like core barley and how much do you balance other of these specialty malts?
The lowest we go is typically around like 60% barley, and like the highest is probably 80. So
it's a really good, significant percentage of non-barley malt in there.
And certain things behave better and give us more extract, and certain things are just because we know they taste really good.
Yeah. And you're not making spontaneous beer here. All of this is yeast culture.
No, we do have a mixed culture that is in barrels that we do make a beer once a year with that, but that's not the focus of what we're doing. Like the focus is that DuPont Blaugie style of Saison with a little bit of little funky craziness that might come in at a certain point, but
a little bit here and there, but that's not the primary. Okay.
It's a seasoning.
Hey, that's fair. So then like hot side there, low alpha hops, as you mentioned.
Lots of low alpha hops. Will be the flagship beer is like 2.25 pounds per barrel hot side.
All right, that's a pretty significant hop load of low alpha hops.
Yeah, there's a bittering edition of like whatever was the highest alpha that we bought that we aren't using to get a little bit of bitterness in there, and then always first wort just so I don't forget that I need to add the hops, and then
so you don't forget.
Yeah, you gotta. It makes life easier if you accept that you're kind of a dumb guy, and then you build systems around being kind of a dumb guy.
As long as you start doing it now, you've built a muscle memory and you're going to keep doing it because you already opened the bag.
Right. It's already laid out. And then I'm like, oh, the wort's going in at it. Whereas like, I'll just forget to start a timer. And then, almost everything here is a 20 and 0 minute edition. I don't know why. I just started doing that when back in the Pipeworks days. But between those two, it's probably about 0.75 pounds per barrel split between Grüngeist and Saphir for Wilby, and about 1.5 pounds per barrel in the Whirlpool of the same hops split evenly.
It's not an inconsequential amount of hops. I mean, it's not a huge amount of hops for the volume that you're brewing, but
right. But so that's a 15 barrel batch, and our brewery used to be Metropolitans, and we get sometimes that does not. The brew house does not like that. And we were talking with Doug, and he's like, well, yeah, don't do that. And we're like, well, that's how the beer tastes good. And he's like, yeah, don't put that many hops in it.
That's a lager brew house that you got there.
Right. Sure. So it's not like a crazy amount of hops, but when people think of these beers, they don't often think of them as hoppy beers. And I think there's something to the polyphenol and adding a lot of low alpha hops to these beers that builds the body out. And so every step of the way, we're trying to add body that we're going to get rid of by getting rid of all the sugar and probably a lot of the carbohydrate that's not non-sugar, longer chain carbohydrate through fermentation. So we also...
Oh my God, Mike, you're talking about using hops for texture?
Yeah. No.
God, I hate that subject. I never talk about that here on the podcast.
No.
But that is amazing.
Yeah.
And, and in drinking this, I wouldn't necessarily think, oh my God, that's like several pounds per barrel of low alpha German hops. Like,
sure.
It doesn't come across in that kind of way. It comes across as smooth and lightly fruity, and none of that kind of gritty or herbal kind of character, even like aged floral that I might associate with some of those hops. And so I kind of want to pull that apart and understand this a little bit more about how you were doing that and how you're pulling that. Before we do that, you know the pain all too well. You're guessing at market trends left in the dark about how your liquids are performing on the shelves. You can't tell if your distributors are actually executing the objectives you gave them. But now there's a faster, more real-time and value-packed way to get the full picture instantly and strengthen those distributor partnerships. Introducing Orbit by Encompass. Orbit Data and CRM connects your production performance directly to the wider beverage market. Orbit Data provides real-time visibility into retailer data, sales, and inventory so you can make faster and clear decisions. It's also a CRM for your supplier sales team that brings total transparency to your distributor relationships, keeping them accountable to what they need to sell and how. Orbit empowers producers to drive decisions with accurate data, discover new profit streams, and pivot faster than ever before. Go to encompasstech.com/launch-orbit for more details. That's encompasstech.com/launch-orbit. And running a brewery means juggling a lot, managing production, serving guests, selling online, and keeping everything moving behind the scenes. That's where Arrived comes in. What started as a point-of-sale system has grown into the technology your brewery runs on, built specifically for the teams behind great beer. Unlike generic systems, Arrived brings together taproom service, online sales, brewery management, payments, reporting, and growth tools into one complete platform. So instead of bouncing between systems, you can brew, serve, and sell all in one place. Visit Arrived, ARRYVED.com to learn more. Also, brewing has always been about creativity, but at scale, it's about control. For more than 100 years, Haas has worked with brewers to push what's possible with hops. And today that means more control over flavor, efficiency, and consistency. Their advanced products help you get more out of every brew, more flavor where you want it, less waste in the process, faster tank turns, and results you can count on batch after batch, year after year. From next generation pellets like Lupicore and Lupamax to innovations like Incognito and Euphorix, Haas products fit seamlessly into your process from the hot side through fermentation to the cold side. Advanced hop products are just one of the ways Haas is growing the future of brewing. Learn more at johnihaas.com. So let's talk about this, Mike. Is there something to the way that you select some of these hops that lend that soft edge? Because there is a softness to this that I would not say that I would typically associate with those hops.
I don't know if it's selection. We trust, well, we were buying everything from Hophead Farms in Michigan, which is going to be tough.
Yeah.
So, and we just trusted their selection of Grüngeist, which is just kind of a proprietal window pick for Callista, I believe, of them. And then their Saphir and like what they were choosing. We're too small to actually go and really select stuff.
Sure.
But we are I think we're much more chloride focused in water chemistry than a lot of other Saison breweries. Mm-hmm. Another way to add body, but also build softness. We also have very soft water because of, we're getting it from Lake Michigan. So, we don't have a romantic story to tell about well water that, we have to boil and there's sludge in the bottom of it. And I'm like, that sounds like it's going to be tough to make the beer that I think I wanted to make. So we add a bunch of...
You don't want that Jester King Austin water with 700 parts per million of TDS. And,
no, we don't. Well, we don't have it and we don't want it.
There you go. You're not going to create it on purpose.
And I don't think it's I spent most of my life living here, so I'm used to the way our water tastes. So we're just augmenting it a little bit with chloride. It's like for a 15 barrel batch, I don't remember the actual parts per million or part per billion, but it's like about 500 grams of calcium chloride and about 360 grams of calcium sulfate to build our water profile for what we do with pretty much all the Saisons.
Well, so you're like just a hazy Saison brewer then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the idea was to make Saisons
Mr. Chloride, gotta pump that chloride, not the sulfate.
Well, we wanted these beers to be accessible and approachable to people who will go to breweries, right? And so what they're doing is they're going to other breweries that have a very high, very different water chemistry than a lot of Saisons are typically. And I thought that having something very, very similar was a very nerdy way to make these beers more approachable to people who think they don't like Saisons or aren't really sure what a Saison is. And that's not something we don't even we never tell people that. Like that's not like a selling point in the tap room, but it's something that, having knowledge of how these things work, you can make Saison more approachable for the people that are going to come and that don't think they like it or have only had, 8% alcohol Saisons or whatever it is. It's also a way to build the body. So losing all that body
turning
through
people into
fermentation.
Saison consumers by mimicking water profile from hazy IPA is incredibly smart, and I just love the core concept of that, softening it and and building that kind of accessibility into it. Because no, I think you're right. If they're familiar with some of these flavors, like when I drink this, I'm not getting a sharp phenolic character. I am not getting some of the more polarizing pieces there, and then also not getting this like rustic old world European kind of note. It does feel like a contemporary Saison that's made in a way that is respectful of the tradition, but also isn't a slave to it.
Thank you. That's kind of exactly what the hope is. Or people who've never approached the style before. Some come and they only drink this, or our neighbors. We live in a neighborhood also where Hop Leaf is 3 blocks away.
Yeah.
So there's probably a little bit more familiarity.
I do know that because I had dinner at Hop Leaf last night, and then walked over here for a glass of Saison.
Yeah.
And they've trained people on some of these Belgian beers.
Yeah, exactly. And we have some staff we share too. So I'm sure some people will be like, you should go check out this. But yeah, so like this neighborhood is very familiar with that. Just it's normal, which helps, the making these beers approachable. But we just wanted to make drinkable, approachable beers. And I thought part of that was soft, approachable water chemistry. I was listening to an episode you did with Sean Hill where he was talking about like stone being like, if it's too aggressive, then you're unworthy, right? I had, not that that's how Saison brewers think, but there is like there could be this standoffishness of like, these are complex flavors. You might not be ready for this. And I'm like, why? Like, why? I mean, you can make those things, but if that's everything you make, then that's why you don't get to make that much Saison, I guess. But I want people to drink the beers and I want them to drink a good amount of them. And like have a joke that like the best for Wilby is the third Wilby you've had, because that's how it like really opens up and expresses itself. But yeah, that combination of softness and water profile, I think, is probably why those hops present the way they do.
It's remarkable. So then let's talk about that entree into fermentation. So there are hot side, there are some hot side hop additions of these. Mm-hmm. Are you pushing any of these hop additions into whirlpool or dry hop?
There's like a 0 minute flame out whirlpool kind of thing where we're not cool pooling or anything. It goes in, I turn the steam off, the hops go in and we start spinning it. We almost never dry hop. We dry hop some things, and when we do, it's like half a pound per barrel, or it's a very low amount of dry hop. And it's the thing we dry hop most frequently. It's a low amount is our table beer, because that's the idea is that you need to throw everything at it to get it to drink like a full beer. Like I think of that as like a pitcher doesn't really have the fastball to rely on, so they're throwing changeups and they're throwing curveballs, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, what just happened? This tastes normal. So that has a little bit of dry hop. We're releasing a beer like this week with Beer Temple that has a dry hop with Citra in it. That's more of a conceptual beer than it is a core to our beliefs about Saison. And we started dry hopping more things here when we can serve them on draft. They just don't work the way I want them to work in the packaged version of the beers. I don't know if it's oxygen ingress because we bottle condition everything or what exactly happening, but it seems like the hop character, specifically when we use American hops or Southern Hemisphere hops, trample on the ester character. We're working really, really hard to get, and muddles those things. And we find when we do use those, it's more successful when we use something like a Saphir or something like a Saz along with them to like tether it to the ground, like that. We don't want that's just like this fruit bomb of whatever that, using something like Citra would be. That the beer I was talking about is all Citra, but it just isn't. They're different. They feel like different languages, and I haven't found a way to make them work together in a way that I'm like, this is elevating a beer where if we didn't dry hop it, the yeast character would be forward. That goes back to the kind of the ethos of the entire brewery is getting the best ester character out of that yeast.
When you are balancing between hot side additions and this 0-minute flame out addition, of the pounds per barrel that are going in that hot side, how does that generally distribute? Are these hops being cooked longer, or are most of this is backloaded on the hot side?
Backloaded. It's like 1.5 to 2 to 1 between a Whirlpool edition and a 20-minute edition, and then we add bittering hops to some things depending on how much to get to the place we want to get. Different beers are different. This is like 28 IBUs. Some of the beers are low as 18. Some of them are high as 35. And then we just reverse engineer my recipe writing comes out of the School of Pipeworks where we were making IPAs. So I think back to front when we're doing hop additions.
Sure. Back to front.
The end of the beginning.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
So then let's talk about fermentation. You knock out and you load these in. You've mentioned you're going in at the mid 80s, and so it's a nice warm fermentation to start, and then that saison yeast loves to just rip. Talk to me about that kind of fermentation. And you're fermenting in cylindrical conicals, but they're like Grundies. So when you look at like the geometry of them, they're like shorter, and the cones are pretty shallow. And then the open top, or like just zero head pressure. They have like about 2 foot manways on the top that when we knock in, we take off and we put canvas over it for the first 2 to 3 days of fermentation. And then when the krausen falls, we put the top back on and put a blow off on it. So when we're in the esterification period, which is typically like 24, 36, 48 hours, it's open top. Like these, I don't think these yeasts really they don't like stress. And so pressure is stress, and temperature control is stress until you get to a certain point where it's too hot for them. And so they do the things that we want them to do when they're under the least amount of stress. I know people were like, you should underpitch them, or you should do like X, Y, and Z thing with these types of yeast that make esters and phenolics. But what we want is the most relaxed, least stressed out yeast. Because what we're trying to do is produce specific esters, and there's different esters that happen at different temperatures too. And so we're trying to create the higher, more tropical esters versus the kind of lower, more bubblegum banana esters. So we'll knock in 80 to 86, depending on the beer. Like Wilby typically gets knocked into 80, but Bourgeois Daydreams, which is like a 6 Plato starting gravity beer, gets knocked in at 86, and because there's not as much time to get to the range where we think our favorite esters are being made. Knocking at 86, we don't really temp control. There's one beer that we use Saison yeast on that we actually control the temperature of, but we're trying to make a beer to guard. So we don't want as crazy of yeast expression. But everything else we knock in, and then honestly, the problem more often in Chicago in a space that has 30-foot ceilings and gas costs what it costs is keeping them hot enough. Yeah. For a lot of the year, this is just going to be too cold for that. Yeah. So we don't have jackets that we can like switch from glycol to cold to hot. So we trickle water over the sides of them often to keep them in like the mid 80s we'll put the top on for about an hour, trickle water over it to make sure the temperature stays in the mid 80s, because that's where things are supposed to be happening. We also got in the habit of adding simple sugar, like dextrose typically, but depending on the beer, we might add demerara sugar or something else that's more flavorful sugar on day 1 and 2 of fermentation. Really? I don't know if it makes a difference. Feeding the fermentation. I don't know if it makes a difference between adding it in the boil kettle or adding it during fermentation, but something in me feels like adding that simple sugar during esterification and during when these yeasts are really doing their diastatic thing, where the diastatic yeast actually, like, while they're metabolizing, they're kicking out enzymes that will break longer chain sugars down. They're not actually good fermenters without this gene, and it's not happening within the cell. It's happening outside of the cell. So having simple sugars will give you drier beer, not just because it's turning the simple sugars into alcohol, but because it's creating more enzyme to turn the longer chain sugars into simpler sugars that it then can consume. So definitely adding, depending on
beer, definitely adding simple sugars. There's a few things we don't do that too, but adding simple sugars during day 1 and sometimes day 2 of fermentation, just making a syrup with dextrose.
Just seems counterintuitive, Mike. You know, like all of the things that we've been told of, like don't give it simple sugar early on. That yeast is going to get lazy, and then it's going to just not fully ferment.
Yeah, but
you're telling me it's a different story here.
When you live in the city with Omega yeast, you can like learn a lot of stuff about how these things actually ferment, right? And we had a lot of stories about how these things work, but then when you have actual science about what it actually, when you turn the STA1 gene off, it doesn't ferment anything longer than like simple like glucose. So what they found is that it's excreting alpha amylase or some similar amylase enzymes to exogenously break down longer chain sugars or starches.
Yeah.
And so we want to give it that so that it can do that and release more of that. And honestly, in the winter when it's colder and it's slower fermentation, we will sometimes add exogenous enzymes just to make sure we're hitting the right gravity. Because we're also just not going to, if you're not hitting it within the first like 2 to 3 weeks, it's not like it's going to get down there with a single strain of yeast. It's just going to be too tired it's not going to make it. So we'll add, and we're talking like maybe 5 milliliters of alpha amylase to a 15 barrel batch to make sure it gets to, half a Play-Doh or so.
So light lager of you.
Well, you got to use all the tools,
Hey, modern approach to Saison, right?
Yeah.
Here we are boosting chlorides, keeping it soft,
right?
But also fermenting the shit out of it with alpha amylase enzymes in order to make sure that it gets into that dryness. It's kind of a remarkable thing because you drink this and it doesn't drink as if this is a bone dry, super fermented beer. Like it has this like soft fullness to it and a fruitiness as well. That doesn't go into that kind of, phenolic bubblegum, banana kind of note, but does, or that kind of overly estery kind of caricature of Saison that we sometimes get.
Right.
It just feels natural and tropical in its tone.
That's like, yeah. So it's all adding little layers of things throughout the point to have a fuller tasting beer. This is probably about 0.4 Play-Doh finishing gravity.
You're kidding me.
No. Yeah, it's 0.2 to 0.4 is where this beer finishes and where we think it drinks correctly.
That's pretty remarkable.
Thanks. Yeah. I also think that allows you to feel better drinking more of them. Like you put them back and they're convivial and agreeable and just easy drinking. And that's what we want 99% of our beers to be easy drinking. And then if you're like, what's going on with this? We can answer a lot of questions about how we spend a lot of time and probably too much money to make it that way. But
sure,
we don't want you to have to think about that.
So then how do you finish off fermentation then?
Depending on the beer, like Wilby is probably the only beer we make now that doesn't end up getting some type of Brettanomyces at the tail end of fermentation. So around like 2 Play-Doh for most things, 2.5 to 2 Play-Doh, we'll add Brettanomyces to it, which started as Omega's all of the Brett's blend. And then over time, we added things to it that we got from other yeast banks or other sources that we wanted to try out. And now we just...
So now it's all the Bretts and all the rest of the Bretts too.
Yeah, right. And then at one point I asked them to pull out a couple of things that I thought were a little bit too funky and too, not disagreeable, but like not aggressive, but just not what we were looking for in Brett character. And then we added some things to that and we repitched that from the last bottles of the last beer with Brett in it. So we just keep that going for...
Which Bretts are on your shit list?
I don't know. They're all like Brett Bruxes. The ones that can get too band-aidy, the ones that produce too much phenol. I'm just phenol adverse generally. A little bit of that is great and actually builds depth and character, but we don't want it to be like challenging we don't want anything to smell or taste off. It's very funny how often people are like, man, this beer is really clean. And I'm like, well, technically none of this is what brewers would call clean, but it finishes clean. It has clean fermentation character. And like, again, we're not on a farm. It's not like the pure expression of the terroir of what the horses being nearby. So I don't know why that I would want it to be a goal that this disagreeable flavor is in our beer. So,
Barnyard is not part of your descriptor
lexicon? A little bit of it. We like a little bit of it, but it's just not, I mean, it is fun, and their challenging beers can be fun, but we're not trying to make challenging beers very often. We're trying to make drinkable, agreeable beers. But yeah, so almost everything else that's on the draft board right now has Brettanomyces at the tail end of fermentation, which typically...
tell me about how you add that at the tail end of fermentation and what that really means. Because if you're not giving it a long runway, you're not giving it much to eat if it's already pretty dry. Like, where is gravity when you add that, Brett?
Like between 2 and 3, typically. Okay. And then those beers don't ever get like enzymed unless it's like the dead of winter and it's 20 degrees or 40 degrees in the brewery.
Yeah. Your Brett is your enzyme on that.
The Brett will be the enzyme on that. And we give everything about 4 to 5 weeks in primary fermentation. Even the stuff with enzyme, like we're not turning things over any faster than 4 weeks. Partially just to make sure everything is done fermenting and not moving anymore, and partially because there's only myself and one other person doing production in the back, so having a regular schedule is helpful. And people aren't, it's not like other half in 2016 where people are beating our door down to line up for these beers, but people are drinking them. Yet.
The Saison craze. We're just priming it now. It's going to happen.
I mean, it's happening here. People are drinking the beers. They're coming out every week. And we're putting some beer in cans now, which all is can conditioned. And that's been a huge thing for people actually being able to approach it. Some people the bottle was a non-starter. But yeah, that's the tail end of fermentation.
So this long finishing Brett fermentation just gets it down into that 0.4 range over
0.6
weeks.
to 0.4.
0.6 to 0.4.
Sometimes 0.2 for Wilby.
And there's no real temperature control on it then at that point. It's just kind of riding itself out at where it is.
Once we're down under like 2, we're not heating it up anymore. We're trying to heat it up to get down there, and then the Brett is accustomed to being in Chicago at this point and can handle colder temperatures, and we'll get it down there. It's a little slower in the winter sometimes, but not that much.
So then, there's a little bit of mixed culture what you do, but more of what you do then involves building iterations of Saison that include other ingredients. There's a dozen Saisons on your board, but you have a pretty consistent Saison, approach here. And so it suggests to me that those ingredients, whether that's fruit, whether that's additional spicing, whether that's, approaching culinary kinds of flavors, that also plays a fairly significant role in the way that you build other expressions and, build some kind of broader approach here. What are some of the more kind of common flavor approaches that you find that consistently find their way into ISWA's Saisons?
I think a big thing is, because we're a small brewery that works in the style of beer that allows for a little bit more runway and will get very dry, we aren't as afraid of like introducing, the dreaded diastatic. We already have the diastatic yeast. So we do almost everything flavor wise cold side. One of the beers you're drinking right now called Saison de Gel has chamomile and lavender in it. And that one we actually extract hot. It depends on the ingredient. We extract hot as a tea and then add that in the bright tank. That one has honey in it as well that we add during fermentation. So when we would typically add Brettanomyces for that, we add the Brettanomyces and the honey. So around 2 Plato. And then we recirculate it for a couple of days to make sure the honey ferments out. That beer finishes negative gravity.
Negative gravity.
Yeah.
And it doesn't drink like it at all.
It's all local honey, and honey is, people think it's antiseptic, but really it's just so, has so much sugar in it that those things just stay in stasis. So when you dilute them into, 250 gallons of beer, they wake back up. And so that's a way that we get like wild yeast, actual wild yeast or actual wild bacteria into our beers. 'Cause it's not something we typically do other than a one beer a year. But most things go in cold side. When we do fruit, we do really long extended maceration of it on the beer. Again, partially for practicality, that like there's only two of us and we want the beer to be drinking the next season and there's no reason to rush it. But we get fruit from local farmers in Michigan. We process it as minimally as possible. And then we allow whatever microflora is on that fruit or on that, on the fruit or vegetable to re-ferment the beer to
That's
dryness.
right. Rhubarb is, it's one of your jams.
Rhubarb, cucumbers. We have a carrot beer. We have a beet beer. We have a tomato beer going right now that hasn't been packaged yet.
Sounds like a crazy recipe for massive commercial success.
Yeah, thank you. That's always been something we're very focused on.
Yeah.
But all that stuff is long contact time, like 6 months on the fruit.
6 months.
Yeah. It doesn't need to be that long, I don't think, but it's more just, we haven't seen negative effects yet. And so it used to be like, coming out of a more normal brewery, it was like, all right, it's been like 2 weeks, all the sugar's fermented out. That's good. But now we're like, we try to keep things as whole as possible. And we do that in food grade, like plastic drums. So it's not like
keep
we have
things as whole as possible. Why?
I don't know. It was
rather than pureeing or cubing or creating more contact surface area.
There's some practical applications to it where getting the beer back out of the drum is easier if it's not pureed, and then we have to like wait for it to settle out. If we just quarter the peaches and take the pit out instead of pureeing the peaches, then we can just put the wand all the way down and use the peaches as like a more of a filter and transfer slowly with a diaphragm pump. That's part of the reason. Other part is like, I think that allowing, I'm not a scientist, but allowing like more contact time, slower sugar extraction from getting deeper into the peaches, and contact with Brettanomyces or wild yeast will yield a more interesting result. And there's no rush.
Sure. Outside of fruit, would have been like on the spicing side, again, you are pushing towards subtlety, and there is a roundness and a smoothness even to things that have some of that kind of spice character to them. You are really working hard to not have edge, they're like, even amongst all of these, like, edge is how we would define so many of this kind of like phenolic, saison, and spiced approach.
Sure.
There's no astringency. There's none of that edginess to any of this. Everything is very well-rounded, very well smoothed and refined. When it comes to adding other spicing, is there some kind of approach to that lends this smoothness?
I wish I had a trick that I was like withholding from you. So I'd be like, no. But it's adding things cold side and then tasting it, and then tasting it when it's at the point you want it to be at, or honestly a little under where you want it to be, because your sample port is further away from where the bag is hanging in the tank. So for the next day, and being able to taste flat beer, still beer, and extrapolate what carbonated beer will taste like is an important skill to have if you're going to try to do these things cold side. And running the barrel program at Pipeworks, that was like a thing that I ended up developing. Very different here, but being able to taste things and be like, okay, well, all of that's going to turn up. Like all the aromatics is going to turn up. What does it purely feel like on your tongue? What does it taste like? And then figuring out how much of a signal boost it's going to be when you carbonate things. And we'll carbonate things to different levels to boost the signal differently. I don't know if that's actually doing anything. It just feels right. Most things in bottles are carbonated like 3 to 3.2 volumes. Cans are like 2.7. Kegs are 2.7. So you got to
work within the constraints.
I don't have to go and pick up draft beer, we do all our own deliveries, and I do most of them. So if I sell someone a keg that's pouring all foam, then I'm probably driving out to Downers Grove or something. But it really is just choice and taste. And it used to just be my taste, but now my assistant brewer Ari, who worked at West Lakeview with me. I've known him since those days, who was a distiller for a long time, who didn't drink beer for a long time. Has this like kind of very unique palate to our beers. And so we'll taste them together and I'll be like, this is not ready. He's like, this is more than enough. And so then we'll have to taste them both together again. And, I get to make the decision, but he's almost never wrong. So it's nice to have someone like that around. And it's the same with tweaks for Wilby specifically, where like I was like making it more bitter or like making it just changing different things. And he's just like, this isn't it. And I'm like, no, it's so much cooler. It's so much more. It's like, and then he's like, no, this isn't what the beer's supposed to be. And I'm like, 2 weeks later, I'll be like, yeah, he's right. It's always right. So having someone else and having other people here now to bounce things off of has been very helpful in that too, where defining what we're trying to do and like presenting the beers to people and talking and answering questions about like, why does Wilby taste like this and what are we going for? But then having other people, because like, of course I'll make, the joke here is every beer is Wilby, just with different dials turned up or down, which is mostly true. But when you're adding ingredients, it's like, it's all to taste. And when you can taste it, because like, when you add hops to something, you can't just like dip your spoon into the boil kettle and be like, oh, it needs more hops. Like, so when you can taste it, and I would advise anyone who can add things cold side and extract them that way, then do it like that. But there's many times where we add stuff and I'm just like, it's not enough. We need to add more. Or I pull things too early. But usually I would err on the side of pulling them too early and having it be like a subtle incorporated part of the beer. Then the kind of bang you over the head where like, there is elderflower in this. Because then it just isn't as fun. It isn't as balanced. It isn't as drinkable. And we work a lot with restaurants, making beers for restaurants with a lot of those types of ingredients. And they have to go well with the food. And I want to drink beers with food. And an IPA is wonderful, but it's really tough to pair with food because there's such intense flavor. It's a meal unto itself. And it's just not what our beers are. They're companions. They're not the star of the show.
What have been the most interesting ingredients you've used, and what have been the most challenging special ingredients that you've used? And maybe those are the same thing.
It's definitely the same thing. We make a beer every year with roasted agave hearts, where we go down with a nonprofit called Sacred Agave. They raise money to do projects like building wells, or it's been focused a lot around water security currently, but like all sorts of building libraries in rural Mexico and places where they make agave spirits. And so my friend Lou, who runs that, chooses a different region of Mexico every year where we go down and we hang out with the distillers and we bring back, 75 to 150 pounds of roasted agave hearts as quickly as possible to get the microflora of that region to re-ferment the beer. And those are beers that are by far the most challenging beers we make to consume. They're very unique and strange, and I'm not always sure I like what we've made, but I know it's a good beer and I know it's a unique thing.
As a mezcal drinker myself, I feel this, and I feel like
we can open some bottles after the show. I got a lot of mezcal in the office.
All right, perfect.
But it's very.
I knew I liked you.
The biggest challenge with that is like honoring the people we're bringing it back from, right? And then bring what's been very weird is bringing the beer we made last year with a different producer down to the people to kind of explain what we're doing, because they don't. No, there's not breweries like ours in Mexico. So to be like, here's what we're trying to do, and then they have it, and trying to make a beer that is like confusing and tastes sometimes like poblano peppers and is acidic and is very funky. And some drinkable and approachable is and immediately like agreeable to these people who spend their lives around agave is kind of the challenge of that. Like we sell all of it pretty much all of it in Chicago, but like I'm making that for the next person I'm bringing it down to be like, here's what we're going to do with your agave, because that's like a very special plant. The hard part of that is like getting it back in shape, having it roasted enough or correctly, but not too much, which is like, can't really tell them what to do. They're just going to give you the agave they got that day. And then figuring out, that's more of one is with the fruit. It's like at a certain point, it's not really going to change too much. We're just kind of timing it based on our production schedule. With that one, it's like, it can get really weird if we leave it on the agave too long. It still sees about 4 to 6 months of contact time with the agave, but they just go in like basically whole. we've done it where we've like broken it up more, and that accelerates the acidification process like significantly. The base beer that goes into that only has aged hops and then has Oaxacan green corn in it, and the idea is to allow acidity. It's one of the only beers we like want to like allow acidity into, at least from lactic acid bacteria. We do a lot of adjusting in the kettle and stuff, but
Sure.
that's the one of the most difficult ones. Cantaloupe and sugar cube melon is also really, really hard. When something that the experience of is like 90% texture, like it's hard to translate that into something that is liquid. And then we are trying to make a truffle beer with some friends, and I have just failed at it. that instinct to like pull things earlier or to make things subtle, or that the carbonation is going to boost it somehow, did not work for truffles. So that's it. The beer tastes incredible, but when you put truffles in something,
it's just all truffle.
They want it to be truffle, and it's like truffle. It's like it's very subtle. But we'll see. Like carrot was tough too. Raw carrot is terrible. You have to roast the carrots.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's zoom out here as we finish up. You've built this brewery with this weird focus on saison. I shouldn't say weird, but I'm adding
weird is fine.
I'm adding a pejorative value on this. And I hope you understand when I say weird, like this is my people. Like I listen to music that most people would consider weird. Mm-hmm. And, for me, that's a badge of honor. I like things that are deliberately weird.
Obviously, so do I.
We can talk about noise rock. I can talk about, prog post metal, whatever we want to talk about. In this sense, you also have a tap room. You're also here in Ravenswood. Like you've got skee ball machines back here in the room near us. And so it's also just a tap room that people come and drink beer. Last night I popped over here unannounced after having dinner at Hop Leaf and sat in, and folks just came in and they didn't have any issue ordering beer called Saison. And, you are, I think, in some ways like changing the way people relate to the idea of the style itself. What do you hope to achieve over the next few years? And where do you see this in 5 years from now?
When we opened the tap room, the mantra was like, we just want to be a neighborhood bar that happens to make world-class beer. And that's still kind of the thing. We're going to expand distribution, but I also just want to make a space where our employees are really happy to be here and they're really proud of what we're making, whether or not they're like have their hands in making it. I want to make a space where people feel comfortable coming in, whether or not they know what a Saison is. Even if they don't like Saison, we have things for you too. And
you have some guest beers, and you make some like non-alcoholic shrubs and some other other nerdy things too.
But I mean, even beyond just the space, the tap room itself, we want it to be a brand that people really like connecting with, whether or not they have ever heard of Blaugie or know what Cantillon is or know any of these like texts that we were reading to make the thing we're making now. We're part of that continuum. And what we think of this place as is an iceberg, where if you want to just come in here and drink a agreeable beer, you can do that. If you want to start asking really nerdy questions, we can answer those too, and we can steer you towards a place where you can find the things that really inspired us. But we just want to be a place that makes this style of beer that people think is strange, but to me seems like the most agreeable, most presentable, most acceptable style, and was confusing to me why it wasn't for everyone.
Well, thank you for spreading that gospel here in Chicago and walking the walk and committing to it, but also making it approachable and not necessarily making it something difficult for people to also engage with and love. You've built a touchstone for people who may enjoy other modern contemporary styles of beer. And there's a pathway to to connect that thing they like to this thing that they might like that they don't know they like yet. And I think that's it's a cool thing. It's valuable in this world of beer.
Thank you. We have some challenging beers for the people who want to get real nerdy about it, but
of course,
I think you'll like those people will also like the beers that aren't challenging. They're good.
Well, that is a great place to bring it to a close. G&D's Elite 290 Micro Series is built for brewers who care about sustainability and performance. Berkeley Yeast's Dry Tropics London offers their best-selling liquid yeast strain with the ease of use of dry yeast. PacTex handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable. Indie Hop's Lorien has found its way into the hearts of lager lovers across the country. The Midea 50/50 Flex can convert to all fridge, all freezer, or half and half with just the touch of a button. Old Orchard is your one-stop shop for fruit juice concentrates, purees, and blends. Orbit data from Encompass provides real-time visibility into retailer data, sales, and inventory. Rived brings together all the tools you need in one complete platform. And learn more about how Haas is growing the future of brewing at johnihaas.com. If you've enjoyed this episode and any others, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber to Craft Beer and Brewing if you aren't already. And if you're not already, then why aren't you a subscriber to Craft Beer and Brewing? We still make print magazines in 2026. Who does that? No one does that, but we do that because you care and you enjoy what we do. And you can see great recipes from awesome brewers, including folks like Mike here. Even though if you go look at his recipe, go to the website, read it on the website. It might not be exactly correct in print.
I made a typo.
But it is correct. It is correct on the website.
Don't knock out a 4.1 pH if you're making bourgeois daydreams.
Mike, if you want to learn more about Iswas, these Saison beers that you make, this tap room here in Chicago that everybody who loves Saison should come and check out, where can they learn more about you, both in real life and out there in the digital space?
Come to our tap room in Ravenswood, 5121 North Ravenswood Avenue. Come here and then go to Hopleaf, go to both. And then probably the best place is Instagram, Iswas Brewing on Instagram. And then if you DM us there, I'm probably going to answer it. So if I said anything wrong today, or if you have any questions about why we're doing or what we're doing, shoot me a DM.
All right. It's been awesome talking to you about Saison. Mike, cheers.
Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.